like to call this Tampa City Council meeting back to order. Roll call, please.
Carlson. Here. Hurtak.
Here.
Clendenin.
Here.
Henderson.
Present.
Vieira.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
And Maniscalco.
Here.
We have a physical copy.
All right, we were going to start with 97. We're just a few minutes behind, so we're going to jump into 103 and 104. Councilmember Hurtak, if you want to go ahead with that discussion.
Yes, I had a very productive conversations with Ms. Duncan during lunch break, so we think we have it solved. It's a lot of stuff. I apologize. It's just very confusing. We already went ahead and got rid of item 103 because that was the quarterly report that we're no longer doing. That was from 2016, so that's gone already. So we've moved on to item number 104, which agenda item 104, CM 25-12002, will be continued to May 1st as a one-time in-person staff report.
Second.
So this is a one-time, and then we're going to go back to.
No, yeah, this is, yes.
And now, is this information already available online?
No, this is about stormwater service assessment.
Okay, you're talking about, you said May 1st, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Okay, next. CM 25, and I have this for you. I think that Kelly already gave you a copy, but if not, I have another one. CM 25-12001, the monthly stormwater maintenance report, currently scheduled as an in-person report for April 3rd. Well, the report itself will not be uploaded to OnBase until after the in-person presentation will go on as scheduled. April 3rd. It's already on the schedule. It's already moving. Yes.
And the information will be online by then?
No, it will be online after so that they can provide the most update information, because if they don't, they have to have it 2 weeks prior.
Second.
And Gina's okay with this? They're ready
Yeah,
to
they
go?
did it the last time. They're going to be doing it for every one of these reports.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ms. Duncan, do you have anything to add? I saw you come online.
And I still have two more.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just jumping on, if you needed me to weigh in, we are posting this report monthly on our website. The reason it would go on after is because in this particular case, we don't have time from now to the 3rd to get it on base before. But these reports are on our website every month for anyone to access at any time.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
go ahead, ma'am.
And then the next monthly report scheduled for May 1st will be moved to the May 22nd workshop with CM 25-212212 stormwater presentation. That was motioned by Councilmember Carlson.
Okay, and also the original request for continuing the items to May 22nd.
That's only for CM 25-12001.
Ms. Duncan, does that work with you to put that to the workshop in May?
Yes, obviously our purpose is to do everything at once, but we want to be accommodating, so we can do that, yes.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Carlson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then CM 25-13046, the two additional questions that I motioned to be, which are, number one, which would assist the stormwater department facilities crew more, additional FTEs or additional contractor assistance? And two, which is more cost effective for parade route barrier setup and removal, stormwater transportation staff or contractors? Will be moved to the May 25th, 2025 workshop with CM 25-212212 stormwater presentation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? There's a second. Councilmember Clendenin.
So I have a question. I know, actually, it is May 22nd, by the way, not 25th.
I'm sorry, May 22nd, 2025. Yeah.
So, question for you. I know Ms. Duncan had asked to kind of consolidate all these. Would that just be not a non-starter to consolidate all these into that workshop?
Well, yeah, because the others, this is the last one, first of all, and then the other is a monthly report, and we shouldn't have to wait till the end of May, because
Right.
citizens are kind of curious about stormwater.
Yeah, I am, and I've been thinking about this a while, and maybe it's not this, and I'm not going to push it on this one, but it seemed like intuitively, I just think that we have, I don't know how they keep track of all these things. When we generate these reports and staff reports and like a machine,
And that's why I
Yeah.
agreed with what they said
Okay.
and consolidated two of them and moved them to the 22nd.
Okay, I mean, like I said, I'm good with this, and Gene's good with this, but I think generally as a council, we have to somehow kind of figure out a way of wrangling this under control and being more strategic about these staff, like having staff reports come at like one time, or, you know, not being able to burden them as much as we
I
we
agree,
are.
but I can tell you, I don't have nearly as many staff reports as others.
I know. I'm not saying just directly at you. I'm
I'm
just
the
saying.
lowest.
I'm non-existent, I don't make any motion.
Yeah. I know who we're looking at.
You beat
Yeah, but I've been thinking about this for the last few months, because I've just
Well,
seen a
it'd be a
lot.
great time to talk about it during our,
That's true.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I'm
okay.
bringing it
I
up.
will disregard my conversation. Please erase the last conversation, and we'll talk about it a little bit later.
okay, so,
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
that's it.
That's it? Okay. 103 and 104. Thank you very much, Ms. Duncan. That completes that? Thank you, ma'am. All right. Well, let's just keep going. So if we can open the public hearing just to do this continuance. We have a motion to open the 1:30 PM public hearing from Councilmember Henderson, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we have a rescheduling, a request for the review hearing to be rescheduled for May 15th, 2025 for item number 90, will not be heard, misnoticed. Can I get a motion to set item 90, file number SU1-24-98-C for May 15th, 2025, 1:30 PM, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, third floor, Tampa, Florida. Motion from Councilmember Henderson, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll move item 98 to May 1st of 2025. That is on the federal grant coming to Hillsborough County. And also just, it appears that's going to be going through, which is good, because obviously all the chaos on the federal level. But to see how much of it we're going to get. And one of the big inquiries I want to make is how much of it can we use for infrastructure, and then how much of it can we also use for housing assistance. So if I may, I'm going to move that to May 1st, and that is a time when we have 4 items, I believe, so it fits there pursuant to the rules.
We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
That settles that. Administrative update, I don't see Mr. Remmer here, so we'll wait for that. What do you say, Councilman Vieira, they were a few minutes away?
Yeah, I'm unsure. I mean, if I may, I'd request that we wait just a little for the parents, if that's okay.
Okay.
Council, I appreciate your patience.
How Witt is part of administrative update, but he's not here.
Maybe if I may, council, if Chief Bennett could speak, maybe now the bunker gear, I don't know how long that discussion's gonna take. If
Chief
it's-
Bennett, do you want to talk about the bunker gear? I know we have item number 95 tied into it, and I don't know how long you would need for this item.
Good afternoon, council and public. John Bennett, Chief of Staff. It's my understanding Chief Tripp's coming in to speak about 95 as a procurement
Okay.
piece.
Okay, so we'll wait on that.
If there's another question about bunker gear, I'll be happy to try and
If I
answer.
may.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I don't think I have it.
Yeah, if I may, thank you.
ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you, Chief Bennett. So obviously, a letter from Ed Kelly, the president of the, I'm getting a call from the parents. If somebody wants to tee this up, I'll be.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Or I'll come back when
Okay.
your preference.
Go ahead.
Open forum?
Chief Bennett, I have a question, and not to open up a can of worms, but I had a meeting yesterday with Parkland Estates folks and Burns and Epicurean, and it was in reference to the South Howard flood program.
Okay.
And I know we passed this council, we passed the design phase of this, the contract with Kimmons. My question is, and listening to their presentation, and I know we suggest this because I reminded them, the council doesn't negotiate contracts. You know, we just approve them or deny them. They had a proposal which, you know, seemed extraordinarily reasonable, in that it would go down Swan, use that softball complex, and then there's the ditch that's owned by the city that parallels the crosstown all the way down. intuitively, it kind of sounded good. I would really appreciate it if maybe you would speak with the mayor and talk about reopening or asking for an addendum to this contract to at least explore that. So at least we have that definitive answer, because there's an awful lot of public, questions about this. So I think it would be at least have the opportunity to explore that. I don't want to slow anything down, because it's my understanding that the design phase hadn't even really started yet. They haven't, so adding it necessarily wouldn't slow it down. But I think it would be a good idea, to at least bring back that idea of amending that contract to include looking hard at that other proposal.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Have you talked to Stormwater about that? Because they are doing that. Like, the contractors, from my understanding, the contractors are doing the contract work, and then our staff is looking at 3 other possibilities. Have you asked them if that's one of the possibilities they're looking at?
Well, but I think that has to go, Kimmons is doing it. It can't just be our
No,
staff.
they're not. Our staff's doing it.
But that's what I'm saying, it has to be, I think we need to amend the contract with Kimmons.
Why? Why can't our staff just do it?
Because the same reason they're not doing the 3.
The public doesn't trust the process.
Are y'all done?
Because I don't think, because I think the expertise that a contractor brings is different. It's not that our staff is good and, and can do all that. But again, I tell people all the same, why don't we do this with staff? I said, well, staff already has a full-time job. So it's not like we got a bunch of people sitting around doing nothing, just waiting for us to give them assignments. So like in engineering, our stormwater people are busy already too. So all of this, their capacity is only so much. So I just think, it just seems to me, it would be a really simple solution to this, to have an addendum to that contract, to pursue looking at another alternative. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If the numbers aren't there, if it's unrealistic, if the capacity's not there. But man, when I saw that length of the ditch along the crosstown and without, how less disruptive that would be, and knowing how wide, and I from the beginning felt that Swan, at least a portion of Swan, was an alternate because it's so wide. We could do that with less disruption. I would just like y'all to talk about that a little bit.
I can share with what I know.
Okay.
I know that the mayor hosted the same group that you're talking about to discuss alternatives. There were several presented from this group. One of them seemed to have some actionable traction to look at. And I believe what you're saying is true, that they're looking at this as an alternative, but in-house, as Councilwoman Hurtak spoke of. But they also, the next level was to talk to Kimmons about the feasibility. So
Okay.
I think some of this is, I don't have an update, but I think it's been energized that way so far.
And I was gonna call you offline, but you were standing here and we had dead
That's
time,
fine.
so I figured, might as well ask you about it now since we're filling time. It was either that or I was gonna start singing, so.
Either way.
Please don't do that.
Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, I just want to say, I have spoken to Chief Bennett about this. I have concerns about how this whole process was led. It's one of the worst political processes I've ever seen. It was so unnecessary, the division that happened in the community in South Tampa and Parkland Estates. The administration pitted neighbor against neighbor. It's horrible the way this was done. I think it needs to be stopped and restarted in a way that's more positive and productive. Kimmons is handling projects throughout South Tampa, including Harbor Island, McDill 48, others, and they get high remarks on all the projects they do, but for some reason this one was incredibly divisive. It's because somebody decided that this was going to be the route and this is what we're going to do. The business group and the neighborhoods met with staff. I've talked to staff, and after the business groups spent $250,000 looking at these other alternatives, the staff told them, we're not going to look at these. We're not going to look at any new alternatives, and we're not going to go back through any ones that we already did. And then that group met with the mayor, and the mayor said, no, we're going to go down Howard Avenue. This is reported to me secondhand. If the mayor disagrees, she can call me and tell me that she's ordered otherwise. But the point is that they're not looking at any other alternatives. They're only going down Howard, and we know that that's not going to work. Kimmons wants to do the right thing. They're a good firm. But we need leadership on this, and we need to stop the divisiveness, and we need a project that's actually going to solve the problems, because ultimately, after 65 million plus 65 or so million in interest, this is not going to solve any flooding problem in Parkland Estates or Palmacia Pines. We need to hit the reset button on the entire thing.
Thank you. All right.
I mean, look at this. Councilman, I just don't like, again, we just brought this up to the chief of staff. He just told us that the mayor and them are gonna have talk, they're gonna continue to talk. So I think there was probably a decision point that what you just said was accurate, but that's why we're talking about revisiting this now again, is looking at this again. And I think it's an opportunity to have an opportunity to revisit this, and not necessarily, just because that was a decision point, and I agree, there was a moment in time that this was going to be it come hell or high water. But I think that there's an opportunity here that we pivot, and I think what you just heard from the chief of staff is he'll go in, the mayor's already had the one conversation, he's gonna talk again, they're gonna open this back up, again, and have this discussion, staff is looking at it, and let's look at it again. And I don't necessarily wanna close the door saying just because this was the decision moment yesterday is the same point that we're at today.
Thank you very much.
Can I just, just a second bite of that, since you got the second bite.
He didn't have a first bite. Have a first bite, Councilman.
I'm not getting involved in this. This has been, how many times we want to look at this thing? We haven't looked at it before? I feel like quitting right now. Just getting the hell out of here.
No, Charlie, please don't do that.
No, I mean it. I'm not joking. I feel like just getting the hell out of here. We can't make a decision one way or the other.
I thought we already decided.
That's what I thought. And I'm not joking. This is the most discontented individual group, not individually, group that I've ever worked with.
Unfortunately, the voters elected the mayor and she picked her staff, and this is why we have the problems that we're having. And we're gonna talk about that in a little while. May I just respond to that?
I just want to end the discussion because it's not even on the agenda.
I've
just lost all interest in it. Let's just end the
Okay,
discussion.
but I think if he got a second
Yeah.
bite, I get a second bite.
We'll have to do it the next one. Council's pleasure for the next item, I guess.
Yeah,
The,
that's it. There's nothing-
but why,
there's
how
nothing
come
else
I
to
get
talk
cut off,
about.
but nobody else gets cut off on a second bite?
Because this isn't even on the agenda.
I will take 30 seconds. You were spending more time arguing about whether I have the right for a second bite or not.
I just don't want to hear it.
But the chair is supposed to give a second round. Isn't that our protocol?
Have 30 seconds. Go ahead. 30 seconds and the discussion ends.
Just to respond to Councilmember Clendenin, I spoke to Chief of Staff just before the break, and the last conversation I had with him, he'll acknowledge, I think, is I pleaded with him, please have the mayor stand up and say, I've decided to reevaluate this and look at the other options. And as of that meeting, the mayor had not decided to do that. So if things have changed in the last 10 days, I hope the mayor will stand up publicly and say it. I'm not talking about doing nothing. I'm talking about having an honest process that's not politically driven, that's going to find real solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Vera, do you have any updates, sir?
They should be here very soon.
Okay,
So maybe we can do Mr. Reamer.
Yeah, Mr.
And thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much. Witt is here, sir.
If I could introduce
Yes, sir.
Chairman and council and the public, so Whit and Kayla, if you want to come up. So Whit joined us, obviously, when the administration kicked in within the first year, as sustainability and resilience was so important for our intergenerational things that we all know. We know councils work closely with the administration to make sure that our future is strong in that space. The thing that really drew us to Whit, I traveled to Amsterdam, looked at their water usage. I know some of you have looked at different aspects of solid waste and everything else, but it all ties together. But what really enamored us about Whit was the fact that he didn't want to just build a plan and then go somewhere else to build another. He wanted to see it get implemented. And so after multiple plans, we have a lot of traction in place to keep the city moving forward. And working with Kayla, I remember my first real strong iteration is when the storms happened up in the north end. And I turned around and she was there volunteering on her day off to make sure that the community was getting what their needs were. So I'll turn it over to Whit to make some comments and introduce Kayla, and then we'll move on to the next item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, City Council. Whit Rammer, Sustainability and Resilience Officer for the next couple hours. I just want to say that I really appreciate not only the administration's support and creation of this position, but council's support. We've done some remarkable things in my tenure, including significant federal and state grant money for resilient infrastructure projects. We've started Tampa's Green Team, which I know often visit your districts to help plant trees and pick up trash. That's an AmeriCorps program that we hope to still continue, even with some federal threats of cutting that program. And we've created our vulnerability assessment, which is a state-required document that we'll be releasing in a couple of weeks, which really hones in on some of those assets that we need to really be looking at in the future. Pumps, pipes, even just cultural assets like Ben T. Davis Beach could be under threat with future sea level rise and storm surge events. So there's a lot of work that the office has done. We've been very, very successful getting grant money to support our plans that we've written. And I have the full confidence that Kayla Caselli, who's stepping in, will be able to continue to deliver results for you all, for the administration, and for the great people of Tampa. So thank you so much for allowing me this privilege. I love the city of Tampa, and I'm not going far. I'll be staying here with my family and look forward to seeing you guys around town.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, ma'am, would you like to say a few words? Welcome.
Yes, absolutely. Kayla Caselli, so be the interim as Whit moves on to his transition, and I just wanted to thank him on behalf of the city. He's been a huge asset to set the foundation for the work that we'll be continuing to do and working with different departments. We're just a team was two for a little bit, and so we definitely can't do it without the support of every single city staff member in different departments, and we're just here to help coordinate that and continue the course that we're on. We're on a great path, and we just need to continue doing that work.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Mr. Remmer, before you go, it's completely off topic, and before I go to council members, I had mentioned that I wanted to ask you a question regarding something that I had seen. So a notice went out to City of Tampa residents, and it said about a solar program, and there's a link here. I went to the website, I pulled it up, because some people were saying, I haven't heard anything about this. Is it real? Is it legit? It is legit, is that correct?
It is legit, yes. The
Okay.
letter should have been received by targeted mailings in the city of Tampa. I know some got outside into the county as well. We're gonna work with the vendor on that. But we work with a solar nonprofit called Solar United Neighbors.
Okay.
They put together co-ops, which is kind of neighbors that all want to think about installing solar together, and they can issue an RFP together and ultimately achieve pricing discounts based on bulk purchases. Councilman Miranda went through the program with Sun and was very, very happy with it. The difference of that program versus kind of what you saw in the mail is they brought in an advertising partner that sent out these mailers that I totally admit they look like, kind of, I don't want to say solicitations, but they're strongly encouraging folks to look at this, and we'll work with those partners to make sure that they look as official and legit as they should moving forward. But that is a City of Tampa sponsored program, and we hope that folks will look at that, and they're free to go to the website to learn more information.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Henderson, Vieira, Miranda, Carlson.
Well, I just want to say thank you for your leadership in the city of Tampa. Someone was talking about you in the bookstore just 48 hours ago. And we talked about 22nd Street and the heat study and the grant that you worked a long time on that we received. And creating the green team, which I love seeing them, especially in my district. I just want to say, job well done. You left it better than you found it.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Absolutely, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Vieira, Miranda, Carlson.
Thank you very much, and no, just wanted to thank you for all your work for Tampa. And I, correct me if I'm wrong, do you used to work at Ackerman?
No, sir.
Where did I get that from? Okay, forget it, but I know you're an attorney, so what I was gonna say then is, I don't know where the heck I got the Ackerman law firm from with you, but is that, I always value highly attorneys who go into public service one way or another. There's a great tradition in that. I know Ms. Johnson Velez is a former president of the Hillsborough County Bar Association, obviously affirms that. I think attorneys have a unique propensity to go into public service. They have an equal unique propensity to maybe not do that, right? But obviously that's one that you took, and so I think you really ought to be proud of that as a member of the Florida Bar, so just thank you for that.
It's been an honor and a privilege to serve as a public servant, holding the high esteem as a Florida Bar member, so thank you so much.
Councilmember Miranda, Carlson.
I just want to say thank you, appreciate everything you've done. There's some things coming out that were, even after you leave, they're going to come out that you had your footprint and your fingerprint on it. That's the whole thing about the city of Tampa and what we have to do and not do in order to continue. We're talking about different things all at one time, and we're trying to save the world, but we can't even save ourselves. Because what we have is hurricane season coming by. And the problem is we can draw and fix and program something that we need to fix it now, but you can never tell what's coming. So now it doesn't exist in a way. Yeah, if hurricane season is coming, but I don't know what size, what strength, or where it's going to hit. And I've been saying it for a week now. Today's the same thing. The bay is 3 degrees warmer now than it was last time at this year. So we're thinking we're going to have a decline in strength. You're wrong. Or you better pray that it goes somebody else or don't go somewhere at all. And we're not looking for anything in the future that's bright. We're anti-being ourselves and saving ourselves. We're trying to save something that does not exist. So we're not prepared for it. We keep doing the same damn thing all over again as an error and a mistake. You keep repairing the houses and build them just like they were 100 years ago, and they do not withstand the storm or the drainage of water coming into the house. Therefore, they're all going to be what? Total loss, even if they're standing. So we keep doing it the same way, and what a great job we've done. Not you, sir, but us. So we haven't changed one damn bit. And I appreciate everything you've done. I voted for it and will always support solar and the panels, and it doesn't take 19 or 20 or 21 or 40 years to pay back. I can tell you that when I first talked to you and you sent me in the right way where there was a co-op working on, I went to see them, and I was one of the 10. And I think the cost for that was years ago though, it was $14,400. And my electric bill last month was $20. I'm gonna start bringing it in, turning it into the clerk for public record. I am. That and the water bill also. And my drunken driving, which I don't have any, just to show you that I do what I say and I say what I do. It's getting to the point that we talk a lot and America's going to hell all at the same time. Thank you very much.
Second. Councilmember Carlson, and then Clendon.
I said this to you privately, and I wanted to say it publicly. I think you're one of the big thought leaders in our region, and I knew you when you were an activist, and I had respect for you then. You were always pushing the limits of making sure people understood what needed to be done, and it was fun. It was fun to work like that, and I look forward to working with you on the outside. And whatever things you've accomplished here, I hope you can do even more by being a leader on the outside, working with the community to get things done. And to the extent that we can partner with you to help fulfill that vision, let us know, please. Thank you.
Councilmember Clendon.
Hi, Whit. I was really sad to see your announcement that you were departing but exciting. You close the door behind you, and you walk in the front next door, and you don't look back and keep going. And I've had many of those experiences, and with no regrets. So as you move forward in life, there's all these new challenges. What an excellent opportunity for the city of Tampa, though, to start something from ground zero, and build something and see what you've done. And I think I echo. I can't remember who said that, but you'll look. In a couple of years, you're going to look back and see all these seeds that you sowed, and see what has become of them. And I'm excited for that for you, and I appreciate everything you've done for the city. You're definitely one of the best examples of a public servant, and your dedication to what you believe in and your cause is admirable. Thank you.
That's very kind. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're a great guy. I hate to see you go. I'm just gonna. It's very simple.
No, you're not a great guy. Get out of here.
I appreciate you always inviting me to meet with the Green Team and speak with them. Wonderful program, great people. The future of our city is bright. When you see all the young people getting involved and how much they care and what they do, it gives me hope. And you were there leading them. And I can't say anything but good things about you. You have my respect and the respect of a lot of people. We were very lucky to have you here. So best of luck to you and your future endeavors, but you're going to be missed. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All very much. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Vieira, item number 97.
Yes, and Mrs. Bruce C. Boonstapple is here, so Ms. Van Loan, if you wish, you may. Go ahead, ma'am. Thank you.
You're going to receive and file 96, right?
Good afternoon, Chair, council members, and the Boonstapple family. Michelle Van Loan, Real Estate. I'm going to be a little bit more brief this morning than I usually am, just because the family is here and we'll have a lot more things to say about the young Harrison Boonstapple. That means a lot more coming from them. If we can have the PowerPoint.
Go ahead.
Today's honorary naming request is to honor the life of Harrison Boonstapple, whose brief life stands as a shining example of perseverance and becoming a fine young adult while overcoming physical challenges since birth and the resulting developmental challenges he received during his lifetime. Harrison graduated from prep and academies in 2022, highlighting his growth both academically and also socially. Harrison grew into a strong, independent young man, and despite his challenges, had a job and was working and was taking college courses to advance himself through life. Harrison symbolizes achievements through hard work, his positive, very positive outlook on life, and the support of his family and friends. Harrison's success is a testament to the indomitable support of his parents every single day of his life. This honorary naming request is to name the New Tampa All Abilities Park at the New Tampa Community Park in honor of the life of the young Harrison Boonstapple. To quote the Tampa Palms Owners Association in support of this honorary naming, Harrison's name will serve as a beacon to the purpose for which this park was created, that of celebrating and advancing the development of all abilities of all peoples. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am? If you could please state your name for the record.
Yes, Brucey Boonstapple. I have to read it, but today I'm here to share a message about my son Harrison. I'm now and forever his mother, Brucey Boonstapple. Harrison was 20 years old when he was taken from us by gun violence. My son Harrison and his twin sister Ava were born prematurely in June of 2003. They were welcomed into our family by my husband Carl and I, their big brother Nicholas, plus a large extended family and a community of friends. The path ahead wasn't always an easy one for Harrison. He barely survived his first few months in the NICU as he contracted a staph infection through a breathing tube needed to survive with his underdeveloped lungs. The doctors were not sure he would make it. After 40 days in the NICU, Harrison was then sent back to the hospital for a month of testing and the insertion of a feeding tube for all his eating nutrition for the next 3 years. To learn how to walk, he was fitted with leg braces, and in age 3, we discovered he had severe hearing loss, probably caused by these antibiotics. At age 5, Harrison was surgically fitted with a cochlear implant that allowed him to hear and grasp language, which was pretty much the first time. You know, we just didn't know in the beginning that he couldn't hear. Including 5 therapies a week, speech, occupational, physical, and early learning program at Roosevelt Elementary beginning at age 3, where he had 2 exceptional teachers, Miss Casey and Miss Andrea, that shaped everything in Harrison's world with kindness. From 5th grade until graduation in 2022, Harrison attended pep academies, which nurtured him daily with kindness. Kindness is the motivation of the people we're talking about here, and the something like this. This is the people that are always working to make this world better for those less fortunate. Harrison's life was in many ways a beautiful shooting star passing through a whole lifetime in a few short years. He crammed more experiences, more adventures, and certainly more energy into every day of his life than many of us can do. And he had a smile that melted hearts. Perhaps because of his experiences with his challenges, he could be somewhat quiet, even shy in new situations. But once he felt more at ease, the floodgates would open, and his exuberant love for life, for people, and for adventure would open as wide as his amazing smile. Harrison was gifted with an amazing capacity for empathy and compassion. This is a quality that is very, very appealing to those who may have had their own struggles with shyness and uncertainty, and certainly served to draw others to him. Harrison had a passion for adventure, for motion, and for speed. When he was a boy discovering the joys of skateboarding, he pushed his ability to the utmost, and when something caught his attention and interest, he had a strong focus and started researching and learning everything he could about all the details involved. People everywhere had no problem warming up to Harrison. As a server's assistant at Oxford Exchange, he was a hardworking, diligent, and kind colleague during the 2 years he worked there. His manager said he was the quiet boy until 2 weeks on the job. They spoke, and then Harrison had that huge smile, and just like that, they were no longer strangers. Harrison's challenge may have meant that things that seemed simple for other kids weren't as easy for him, but that didn't discourage him from seeing life as an adventure. He lived at full speed. He loved camping trips, hiking, fishing with his friends. He skateboarded, he biked, and when he was old enough to drive, he picked out a bright blue Subaru WRX that he absolutely loved. He was a source of laughter and love for all those who knew him, and he was well known for his kindness and beautiful smile. Harrison's life ended on October 29, 2023. He and his friends had gone out after a usual evening of driving. I have the Life 360 app to know the whereabouts of my children. You all might be familiar with that. Harrison's daily map of driving history looked like a spider web. And after his funeral, we had a car parade with all his friends down the Bayshore, Davis Islands, and through downtown. Harrison, with his two friends, Jordan and Nate, went to Ybor City to watch people dressed up for Halloween. He was only there 10 minutes, going up 7th Avenue and then back again to the garage where they had parked. 18 people had their lives changed forever that day. Harrison was killed within seconds of the shooting. My son, an innocent bystander that had only been standing there for a few minutes, was killed by a 14-year-old boy. His loss has broken the hearts of our family and everyone who knew him. That moment took away my bright, beautiful son, but it has led to the recognition of kindness and his legacy, let kindness win. The companies that have been support are companies that we've known through his life. He's been a part, Pepin Foundation, the Ronald McDonald Training Center. He stayed there for a while. Karen Clay, Tampa Palms Owners Association, and just all these elements. It makes me joyous to think that his name will be on that park, because that was part of his life growing up. He was, I guess, more fortunate than others, because in the beginning they didn't know if he'd talk or walk or anything, and he could do a standing back flip. He just became this guy, even though the neurologist would say, well, I don't know if I'll ever be able to talk. So he might have to talk through a computer. Nope. Even after 5 years before hearing, he did it all. And that brings stuff with it. And like I say, sharing it in Pepin. And also I was going to say, too, is I'm proud of Harrison, and I'm proud of his sister, Ava, and, of course, the rest of my family, Nicholas. But like when Harrison was little, he was really petite. So some kids didn't want to play with him because they thought he was a baby, and he didn't talk that well. But he was the one, when Ava and he would go to the park, and he'd be pushing the swing with a littler kid. I mean, he just cared about everybody. And to me, that's an amazing legacy, and it's an amazing legacy of a lot of people that have lost their lives by this unfortunate gun violence. But the reality is my life is poured into and fueled by the actions that you guys can do. It's a crazy world right now, but he is the product of people caring about him and understanding the value of him, whether he never walked or anything. So this is a real thrill for us to be part of the handicap park. And I just appreciate it so much. And I want my son's beautiful picture to be at the park. Oh, is that it? I can see it. Okay. He just really was something that I think also, in the general scope of things, our children don't have that. I mean, it's so beaten down. And so I want this to be a story not about the guns, but about all the things he overcame and all the qualities and all the things that more people, because I think even kids maybe not with with handicap or special needs, they're broken. And so I love at the park to have his face and say, let kindness win, and inspire others.
Thank you, Mrs. Boonstapple. It would be my honor to support this. Thank you for sharing your story. You know, I remember when that happened, when the news came out, I was up in the middle of the night, and that's the headline that you see is mass shooting in Ybor City. With the chief, he was so diligent with his team, walking through Ybor City, visiting with people, increasing the police presence. We were out together one night. My wife was with us, and you know, your story about your son is so. I'm sorry, I cry. You know, not the first time, but he is an example of what we should be.
Yes.
You know, and these terrible, you know, politics is crazy, the world is crazy, but everything that you said is just so inspirational, and I can't imagine, you know, what you've gone through, and I can offer my condolences, but on our behalf, you know, his name will live on, and you know, and he'll be remembered as a wonderful human being. So. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I was holding back tears just listening to you, Brucey, and Councilman Chairman Maniscalco. Not a damn thing wrong with crying. I'm holding back tears right now. You know, that park is about empathy and compassion and tolerance and decency, and that's the legacy of Harrison, 100%. And one of the things that really has to be said is the courage that it takes you to come up here, and you've been at many forums on gun violence, on disabilities, on victims of crime, and so forth, to bear, damn it, just the worst pain a person could have, and to talk about that publicly to help other people. That's an act of heart and of love that is great courage. It is great courage. And so, you know, you're coming here and telling the story of Harrison. I mean, I like the first year, not knowing if he's going to live, I think it was going to middle school, weighing 60 pounds, being a graduate of Pepin Academies.
He was a little dude.
Yeah, with a big heart. And when you read that story, things like that don't happen by themselves. They happen with a mom and a dad, with parents of the family, with people that love them. And that's what y'all did. And you still love him. You're going to love him forever. And his story, we can, you know, talk about it at that park, because that's what it's about.
I think that would be really beautiful.
Thank you.
Because his life was a victory. The unfortunates of where we're living in this world is that, and we know it's there. But meanwhile, just keep kids afloat and keep myself afloat. Every time I do something like this pours in the strength and love and fuel that I need to go forward. So yeah, every day it's without him, but every time I do something or talk to somebody, I talk to everybody about Harrison, and it's uplifting for me. It's upsetting to get there, but after, it just shows me all the people in this world that are feeling the same way, you know? So, yeah.
And you know, what you talk about is just mourning, trying to become strong in broken places, but commemorating decency. That's it.
Yep.
Decency. So,
And that's what his legacy is going to be about. It's going to be about kindness, because we don't have that in this world.
Amen.
There's a lot of reasons for it, but the fact is, he just always did that. I mean, when he was little, and then growing up, and then even in high school, his friends, the parents told me he was like the cheerleader. When he'd come to the house with his loud car motor going, and his friend would say, "Oh, Harrison's here," and the mom would say, "Harrison's here," and like everybody would kind of get ready, because he just came in with that positivity and stuff, and he became the one that a lot of his friends confided in him when they were having issues, he would be the one they'd want to talk to, and he'd be the one coaching them on, the boy that went through all this stuff already. So I think that's an important in the education process too, for,
Yeah.
along with that is just making kids feel like their life is not predetermined.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do we need an official motion?
Yes, so unless anyone on council wants to. So what I want to do, if I may, is you had mentioned this picture. So I wanted to make a motion on a couple things. And Ms. Van Loan, what motion do we need to make to bring this back for a vote to make it official? And how much time will y'all need and so forth?
Michelle Van Loan, you would make a motion for first reading if it's the pleasure of council, May 15th or any date after that.
Swell. So if I may, I make a motion for first reading for naming of the All Abilities Park after Harrison Boonstapple. And also want to make two other attached issues with, or attachments, I guess, with that, which is that city staff work on a plaque with this photograph of him on there. They can work with your family on what goes there, and that there be a sign in the beginning of, at the actual park, and then on New Tampa Boulevard on the park, because you have to go a whiles away to get to the actual park, so that folks will know that, and they were working on that anyway, right, for the All Abilities Park, but we want to make sure that there's two signs. In the beginning where the New Tampa Rec Center is, and then going into the park. And I did want to mention on background that, again, this Harrison's life, it just uniquely fits into what this park is all about. So that's my motion, if I may,
We have a
council.
second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we're gonna go back to the bunker gear and Chief Tripp. Before we begin, Councilmember Vieira, so we have to vote on 95, but 96, can we receive and file that?
Yes, that is on. Yes, so that's the, so we're gonna be having on that, in-person reports, and then, quarterly in-person reports, and then monthly written reports, and yes, so I liked in there that I saw that the memo said that they're trying to accelerate everything, which I know that's the heart of Chief Tripp on this, obviously, in the union, and I think in there's Nicholas Taco, I need to get new glasses, by the way,
Yep.
and everybody here, and so, yeah, so I know, when is the,
April 17th is the next monthly written report scheduled.
okay, so I guess would May then be the first live report?
Yeah, is it May 15th?
I guess so, okay, yep, so yeah, so receive and file that if I may.
All right, we have motion to receive and file item number 96. We have a second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
And then with 102, it says here, they're requesting that said item be continued to a date and time with the FY25 mid-year report. Do you have a date for that, or?
When is the report, let's see here.
May 15th.
Yep, that's fine, if
All
I
right,
may.
so motion to continue this to May 15th, 2015. Motion from Councilmember Vieira, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. And now we have to discuss item number 95, and
Yep.
Chief Tripp is here. Is she here to speak about 95 and the bunker gear?
So so there's the item itself, 95, and then there's the administration report, or the administrative update on it. I don't know if Chief Bennett or Chief Tripp, when I did that memo, I made sure to put administration, because a lot of times things, it could be purchasing, it could be one department or the other. I don't want to make that presumption. The reason I'd done that is obviously we've heard a lot on this issue. We had Ed Kelly, the president of the International Association of Firefighters, write us correspondence. Chief Tripp then, I believe, wrote a responsive correspondence. And then if I recall correctly, I saw a letter from Mr. Kelly with the IAFF to Jimmy Petronis, our CFO here in the state of Florida. So I think it's incumbent upon us just to inquire on this issue as to the status, and I guess get an upfront picture for everybody, because again, given that level of inquiry and scrutiny,
Yeah.
just want to know. And we thank you, Chief, for being here.
Yes, ma'am. Come on up, Chief Tripp. Thank you for being here, if you want to take it away.
Good afternoon, Chief Tripp, Fire Chief for Tampa Fire Rescue. So, if we're talking about 95, as far as we can talk about the amount first and then go into other
That's fine.
situations. So as we know, the bunker gear is for, you know, the protection of the firefighters that's out there. And of course, with you guys' approval, we can continue to maintain this bunker gear. With the last contract, the last CBA, we actually approved for everyone to get a second set of bunker gear, which that has been in place. And of course, it's supposed to be done over increments. We're talking about money. We just could not issue all at once. We have currently about 70 employees who's going to get that second set of bunker gear. Of course, we're dealing with a manufacturer. So when we talk about the letters, well, let me go back to this amount. So this amount here is actually spaced out on bunker gear that's going to be expired. We also include bunker gear for new hires, and also any bunker gear, because we have to keep a certain percentage of loaner gear. So that's where the amount, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you might have already seen this, it's over through 2028, but I'll confirm that date, don't quote me on it. But that's why the amount is the amount that it is now, okay? So that take care of 95. So as far as the letters that's going, you know, all over the United States, as I spoke with Local 754, and as I told my direct report with the mayor, we are in the process of issuing that bunker gear. It's not that we're trying to hold it for any particular reason. So when we go to the manufacturer, say, hey, we need bunker gear, we might end up with the jacket and not the pants. The pants come later. We did have to send some of that bunker gear back to get a different type of harness that's on it, which we're receiving that. So as I speak and as my letter that went to Mr. Kelly, I advised him that we're in the process now of distributing that bunker gear. But when this bunker gear come in, or when the individuals come in, we can't do it all at once. I can't issue all of the bunker gear at once, because we have to make sure the individuals, it's fitted right, make if any adjustments, changes, if it have to go out. It is a process, and something that, of course, I'm trying to do for Tampa Fire Rescue is to bring the technology. We don't have a good inventory system, so everything is paper. So, of course, it takes longer. So once we get this new supply and fleet facility, of course, that's going to help out with being able to do a lot of things, when I say with technology, to be able to do an inventory and all of the different plans. So I know information is out there saying these individuals are in unclean bunker gear. That is not true. We currently have a SOG policy that talks about contaminated, exposed gear and what needs to be done. We keep a certain amount of gear for loaner gear. If an individual goes to a fire or whatever they're exposed to, that basically how they can come back and decon that equipment, as well as get that gear washed. So we have policies and procedures. I have not been told of any individual that actually went to go get replacement gear because of being exposed and not having that gear available. I don't know. So no one has come and told me. So that's why I don't know what the emails that's going back and saying that these individuals are in unclean gear. You know, it's up to the individual, the employee themselves, if they have gear when they get off duty, to go and have that gear replaced. We have it washed and cleaned, and it's by their duty day.
Thank you. Anything else, Councilman Vera?
Yes, so what I suggest we do, council, is, because again, I've had discussions with the administration on this and everything, is that, you know, getting a letter obviously from Ed Kelly, I know you immediately responded and so forth. I hold, never met him, but I hold Mr. Kelly in high regard on a professional basis, I guess, if you will. What I suggest we do, council, is that we try to see in maybe 4 or 5 weeks do a motion for an update on this to see where we're at on this, because obviously, and let me ask you, Chief, if I may, how long do you think you're going to take to have what Mr. Kelly expresses in his correspondence getting done, to have all the bunker gear that we have distributed? I think this was approved, if I recall, in the latter half of 2023, if I recall correctly. And I know there's, you know, manufacturing issues, et cetera, but how long do you think you're going to need for that?
So what we're doing now, what the my supply division has done and been working on for the last couple of months, is separating that gear, making sure, I'm going to use Barbara Tripp, have her top, her bottom, along with her harness. Once all of that, that's a complete set. We don't want to issue incomplete sets. We don't want Barbara Tripp to get a pair of pants and not have her jacket. So right now what they're doing, they're actually gathering all that, separating it by districts, you know, and shift, and we're distributing that information as we speak. Time-wise, it all depends on personnel, because once again, the individual have to try it on. So if they're off duty, whether they're on annual leave or they're not at work, of course, now we have to go to the next person. So it is going to take a process, and once again, manpower plays a big role in it as well as when I use the word logistic, as far as the technology.
Yes, ma'am. So I see council, the next available date would be May 1st, but I'll let other folks
Is that
speak.
enough time, Chief?
Yes, sir. I'll give you an update where we stand,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
like I said, I'll
And
give you a
we can-
report
We'll
on.
have a motion, Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Clendenin. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Chief Tripp.
Good
How are you?
afternoon. Good, good.
Are there any complete bunker sets that have been distributed at all?
Yes, some has.
Do you
and
have a
some
number?
I don't have a number right now, but I can give you a number, because like I said, we just got a lot, but I can keep you updated.
So this procedure that you talked about, that if, when, you know, the uncleanliness or whatever of the gear, and there's a procedure in place for a fire person to come in and submit that gear or have it cleaned, does that happen? Has anyone ever done that?
Yes and no. It varies on the individual, so our SOGs, believe it's section
What does
503.
SOG mean?
I'm sorry, standard operating guidelines.
Okay.
So these are guidelines that's out to the field, and basically, if anything is going on, especially with that gear, it tells you how to decon, how you're supposed to go and have it replaced. Some stations, which we're in the process of trying to get what we call extractors, where individuals can wash their gear. Of course, that's been a challenge because a lot of the stations are old and don't have the correct receptacles, you know, to be able to put those, that equipment in. But we have procedures, and like I say, the standard operating guidelines tell them in section 503 that how they can go and decon their equipment and also take it to the supply division where they wash the gear and return it to them by the next duty day.
Has anyone ever done that?
We've had some, but it's not, I haven't gotten phone calls saying that, hey, chief, we're running out of gear because we have no more gear because we've had, 100 people come in and replace their gear.
No, you've only gotten the negative reports where they say that it's dirty.
Yes, and that's why I tell them
Yeah.
and I tell my supply division, if they run into any kind of challenges, they're supposed to forward that up to administration to let us know if there have been any problems as far as gear not available and or if they have issues with certain gear.
Yeah, so whoever, okay, so it just says to me, whoever's putting out there that, the bunker gear is dirty, or at least for me as a council member, is also saying that they followed the procedures, got it back, and it's still dirty. That means they have to follow the procedure first.
Right.
And to be able to make that claim,
Yes, ma'am.
so that,
And that's what I wanted to explain with the information that's
Yeah.
out there, because you're putting information out there that's really not true. Because if they go and turn their gear in and they say, well, we can't get your gear back and we don't have nothing for replacement, then now it's a problem. Administration got a problem. But I haven't had that brought to my attention
yeah.
to say, hey, individuals are going to replace their gear and the gear is not available. We also have repairs where we have individuals switch out gear, say if they in a car doing an extrication and their bucket gear get coat, so it have to go out for repairs. It's the same procedures.
Okay. So for me, 754 would have to provide information saying the procedures have been followed and it is still not being done.
Yes,
That would be fair.
that would be
Instead
fair.
of just putting out as though, the administrative team of the fire department is not doing their job.
Exactly.
I have to read through some of these things because I know, there's emotional attachment to it. You're in the leadership position, they are, in the union. And so it's just very difficult to keep up with it. I just don't like reading things on the surface. Is 754 familiar with all of these procedures?
Yes,
SOGs, that's what you call it?
yes, ma'am. They
Okay.
actually got a copy, hand-delivered copy. When we put them out, any changes we make, they get a copy of that as well.
Okay, so what do they want from you at this point?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know exactly what they want. I know, and just as much as I want to get rid of this gear, I want to get rid of it. But like I say, it's steps and procedures that needs to be done. I just can't go and drop off 20 sets of gear at a station and the individuals are not there. This gear is expensive, so everyone have to be accounted for.
Understood. Okay, so there are complete sets available.
It's complete sets available that we're issuing out.
Okay. And if it's not, then that's the report that I would want.
Okay.
That's what I would want, is the report to exist, to say, this number of individuals have not been able to receive the full bunker gear because a pants is missing or not the right size, or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
And I mean, that's what I would want.
And we
Because that
do-
also says that they have followed the procedure, the
Okay.
SOG, to get to that point.
And we do have individuals that actually have been measured but have not ordered their second gear because we had to wait for this funding to come through.
And
Because it was
just that, you should consider using that data as well.
Okay.
To document everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Because of the nature of what you face on a regular basis as the chief of the fire department. But thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the weeds on some of this because a lot of this is just, it's a symptom. I mean, you and I have had these conversations in the past, and I've had these conversations with the president of 754 as well. This issue isn't necessarily about bunker gear. This issue is about a breakdown between management and labor and the union, a breakdown of relationships. And we can try to point fingers all day long, but we've had this, I think between you and the president and the leadership of your leadership team and the president's leadership team, somehow y'all have got to get down and sit down and figure out a way to move forward so that we don't have, because, think about how much time is wasted of your productivity. How much time the union's spending in doing this. And because I know you're contractually obligated to provide the bunker gear, which I think we're kind of out of compliance with that now, right? Was that a budget? Wasn't it last year we were contractually obligated?
Yeah, the contract don't end till September of
So
this year.
September of this year, okay.
Yes.
Okay, I knew it was last year, I didn't realize it was September, December, okay. But, obviously I was a labor guy and I've been on both sides of this equation. I've been in management, I've been in labor dealing with these kind of issues. And I just know when these kind of issues rise up, it's always because it's a breakdown of relationships. And if we can fix that relationship, we'll save you time aggravation, we'll save them time aggravation, we'll save the city of Tampa taxpayer money, because all of this costs money. I just urge you to dig deep and try to figure out a way to rebuild those kind of relationships so that when these kind of things come up, that you can have in an informal way and have that relationship that you can sit down and say, hey, how do we create, and maybe it's going above and beyond what you feel like, the role is of management and labor, but sit down and say, how can we the bunker gear comes in, like you said, in piecemeal. And if it can't happen, it can't happen, and here we are. We're just gonna have to continue to do business like this. Ideally, it's just not the best way to do business. I think you know that. I know you do, because you and I've had this conversation. So, and hopefully, the president of 754 can bend some, and you can bend some, and you guys can figure out a better way forward.
I agree with you, and if I can comment on that,
Yeah,
respect
absolutely.
is owed to everybody.
Yeah.
And the amount of respect that's received, towards me is totally unacceptable.
Well, yeah, and I hear you, and I think the same thing. And I'll bet you if I was to ask them, they'd probably feel the same way. Disrespect of the union, and like I say, and I wouldn't take you guys out of this because I've been in this world in a whole different environment, right? And I know how these things break down and how the relationships fall apart. And I think we talked about this. At the lowest point, I think what we ended up doing is going off campus to, like say, a ropes class and do some team building and try to rebuild that respect in those relationships. I think there's opportunities out there but it has to be both of you guys open to do it. There's opportunities out there to try to rebuild those relationships so that otherwise, man, because I feel bad for all y'all, because I know this is what a pain in the butt it is for you, and it's a pain in the butt for the union and the union members to have to live in this type of environment. It's much better to be in a collaborative environment where you're all moving towards that same direction. And I wish that for you all, because I know it'll make you all, much more happy in your professional lives if you're able to find that. But thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Miranda hasn't spoken yet, and then I'm going to go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just listening, and the more I listen, the more confused I get. I read somewhere in the newspaper, Tampa Bay Times or something, and I'm not sure if it was there or not, that the fire department went to some fire, there was no bunker gear available or something. I don't know if that's factual or not. Maybe I dreamt it, I'll be honest with you. So now I hear that the equipment, when it comes in, you're gonna distribute it out. You got 24 fire stations, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we got 7 days a week or 30 days on a calendar. Even if when it comes in, and I'm not trying to tell you or the union what to do, but distribution should be at the station where they're at. Deliver them to them. I would imagine somebody knows what sizes they wear. and it was ordered that way, whether it comes, sometimes you order a suit that's a little tighter or looser than what you need. I understand that. It's happened to me many times, only because I gain and lose weight on purpose. That ain't the suit, it's me. So I don't see distribution being a big deal. I don't see it from your side or from the union side. I'm just speaking as a guy next door. I don't think that's a big deal. How many you got at the fire station? 10, 12? Here's 5 for this, 5 for that. Put them on, see if they fit.
That would be perfect if it was unisex, one size fit all, but everyone is measured.
Well, I said
specifically.
it's different. I mean, I said there were different
Yeah.
sizes, so they
Right.
can try them out there.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I mean, I don't think it's that difficult to make the distribution.
It's not, and that's what we're doing. But once again, everyone have to try that gear on, you know? So
Yeah, and
we're,
then you go into 3 shifts for 3 days, and you're not gonna get them all,
no, but
you get the preponderance of them.
we are definitely
Yeah.
distributing that gear, yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Henderson.
I'm kind of at a loss for words. I was listening to Councilman Clendenin, and really, there's unfortunately some problems you're not going to be able to solve. Mayor Jane Castor appointed you as the chief of fire and rescue, a woman, a black woman, and there is a lot behind that is not being spoken today, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just got to stay prayed up. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes, ma'am.
Because some of this, if you've already expressed that there is a procedure in place, like I said, the documentation, if they don't have it, based on what you have in place as the leader, then I would like to see that data. Just reading that the bunker gear is dirty and they don't have it, but yet the procedures haven't been followed. I'm not listening to the noise. I feel like you're doing a great job, and maybe there should be some more support above you and below you, so that you can do your job effectively.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Vieira, you had a motion
Yes,
for May
sir.
15th.
So I motion to come back with the status of the bunker gear on May 1st.
Yes, sir.
And if there's some resolution of it before where we can take it off the docket, that's great. But I do that so that we can, keep an eye on this, because again, given that correspondence, we do have to apply scrutiny to that, obviously. So that's my motion, if I may.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Miranda, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And then item number 95, do you want to go ahead and move that?
So moved, yes, sir.
We have a motion for item 95. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Clendenin, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. We have a review hearing, item number 89, filed by Tom Hanks.
I saw that.
Not that Tom Hanks, but, I don't know. Are you Tom Hanks? All right.
Yes.
Not, different guy. All right, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Susan Johnson Velez, Legal Department. Council members, this item number 89 is a review hearing for petition for review of VRB 24-66. The petitioner, as you have noted, is Mr. Thomas Hanks. There were 2 variances requested in this application. The first is a request to reduce accessory structure front yard setback from 60 feet down to 1 foot. The second request was to reduce the backup distance from 10 feet to 1 foot for a 2-car parking structure.
And ma'am, before you continue, I need to swear everybody in. Please raise your right hand if you're going to speak. Mr. Hanks, as well, please stand up.
And I'm sorry, there's Stephen Eister is also.
He's on.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
We'll swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'll just continue.
Yeah.
So the petitioner, the application is within your staff report that you have in the packets that have just been distributed to you. The petitioner cited 3 reasons for his request, or 3 justifications. His property being narrow and not having enough space on either side of the house to drive a vehicle to the back of the house. There being no other option for placement of a carport, and then finally, the additional benefits of a carport for ground erosion and solar protection. Transportation did find this request inconsistent because the code requires that the structural edge of a vehicular entrance to a two-car carport be set back a minimum of 10 feet from the property line. And Melanie Calloway with the Transportation Department is here. If council has any questions with respect to transportation's findings. The VRB did determine that this request did not meet the criteria for a variance according to Tampa Code Section 27-80, and therefore it denied the application. As part of council's packet, I have provided you a copy of Section 27-80, which is the application of the variance power. I've also provided you the review hearing procedures in 27-61J2, and I provided you the two code sections that the request, that the variance request applies to, sections 27-290 regarding accessory structure setbacks, and then section 27-156C, which again addresses the structural edge of a two-car carport being set back that 10 feet from the property line. The final page in your packet is our sample motions for council. And I just wanted to remind council that when in these review hearings, council applies a de novo standard of review, which means that council may accept new evidence, take public testimony, and determine whether the petition meets the variance criteria according to the city code. Council also, though, must follow the applicable ordinances, and so that's why I provided you 27-80. And with the variance application, I know you've had several of these review hearings, but hardship is one of the criteria. It is what the variance review board must find a hardship before they are authorized under the code to grant a variance. Stephen Eister with staff is here, and again, Ms. Calloway is here. At the conclusion of the hearing, council may either affirm the decision by the VRB and thereby uphold the denial of this application, or council may overturn the decision by the VRB and approve the request for a variance. If council has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will turn it over to Mr. Eister.
Any questions? No, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Eister. Please state your name for the record. You're muted, sir.
Hello, my name is Stephen Eister, Urban Planner 2 with Development and Growth Management. May I have permission to share my screen?
Go ahead. It'll just take a moment. We'll bring it up.
Let me know if you guys can see my screen.
It's coming, almost there.
Okay.
They're just making it bigger, so it'll take up the whole screen and we'll see the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah, can you make it bigger on your screen?
Okay, let's see if I can switch my screens.
Okay, there you go. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, council. So in front of you today is VRB-24-66-C, which is at 8406 North Edison Avenue. The owner of the property, his name is Thomas Hanks. The property address is 8406 North Edison Avenue. The zoning is residential single family, RS50. And the request is to reduce the accessory structure front yard setback from 60 feet to 1 feet. Also reduce the backup distance from 10 feet to 1 feet for a two-car parking structure. The code sections in reference today are 27-290, schedule of area, height, bulk, and placement regulations for accessory structures. The setbacks are 60 feet from the front, 3 feet from the rear, and 3 feet from the sides. The other section in reference is section 27-156, table 4-2, note 8. The structural edge of a two-car garage is a 10-foot front setback from the property line. And there is a previous action on this site, which is COD-23-4161, which was construction without permits. These are the standards for the Variance Review Board that they based their decision off of. This is the same document that legal provided you a copy of. This is the Variance Review Board determination. The Variance Review Board heard the case on December 10th, 2024, and after testimony denied the request 5-0. They denied both requests to reduce the accessory structure front yard setback from 60 feet to 1 feet, as well as to reduce the backup distance from 10 feet to 1 foot for the 2-car parking structure. Here's a map of the site. As you can see, the parking structure located in the front yard, and we'll get to more detailed photos in a minute. This is a site plan of the site. In the blue box is the highlighted area of concern, which will be blown up on the next slide. So you can see it's a large aluminum awning in the front yard. It's 20 by 18.63 feet and sits back 1 foot from the property line in the front. These are some historical photos of the site. So this was the property in 2007. This is the property in 2018. This is the property in 2019. And then here's the property currently, which also shows the comment made by transportation about the asphalt in the front yard, just so you guys could see a visual of that. These are the development review comments. Natural resources found it consistent with conditions. Transportation found it inconsistent with conditions and reads, transportation finds the site plan inconsistent with chapter 27-156, C, table 4-2, note 8. The code requires the structural edge of a vehicle entrance of a 2-car garage, carport, or any other vehicle storage area must be set back a minimum of 10 feet from the property line. The proposed carport is only 1 foot. At the time of permitting, the driveway must meet the transportation technical standards. Additionally, the unpermitted asphalt currently covering most of the front yard will need to be removed from the right-of-way and replaced with grass. And then Jonathan's contact information was provided below. Wastewater found it consistent. Water found it consistent with conditions. Right-of-way found it inconsistent due to a platted rear easement, which does not affect the overall what's being proposed on this variance site plan. There is a shed in the rear yard that is outside the purview of this review, but it was noted so Thomas could move the shed out of that easement. Stormwater found it consistent, and TICO had no comment at the time of the review. And then I'll be available for any questions or concerns if you guys have any.
Are there any questions at this time? Ms. Johnson-Velez, do we call up the applicant at this time? Sir, Mr. Hanks, if you would like to come on up. And how long does he have for a presentation? 15 minutes? Okay, you have up to 15 minutes. You don't have to use all that time if you do not want to. And then we'll discuss, and you'll have a rebuttal as well to respond to anything that we say. Please state your name. Go ahead, sir.
My name is, thank you, counsel. My name is Thomas Hanks. I reside at the property. It's my homestead, my only house. The carport that's in question right there it's been there for in excess of 20 years. But I got married and I bought the house across the street, we bought the house across the street, and we had an RV. And and consequently would hold my van, because I've got a high top van. And we moved it across the street. And the mother-in-law lived in my property right there. Excuse me. And then when we got a divorce, then I did the Egyptian and pulled it right back across the street. And that's where it's at. But like I said, I put it there probably in 2001 or 2. It's been there that long. And across the street. That's why you didn't see it in that photo right there. But at the same time, there's multiple carports closer to the road than my house in my neighborhood. And the reason that this is even an issue before you guys is there's a guy at the end of the block that, he OD'd. He was some kind of dope guy. And he pushed me down in the middle of the street with a backpack blower on. And, I'm surviving colon cancer right now. And I had a colostomy bag on me. And he pushed me down and cracked my ribs. So I called the police up, and whatever they did to him, I don't know. But that was like Friday or Saturday. Monday morning, I had the sticker, and the lady, Suzette Rodriguez, gave me the name of the guy who filed against me, and it was that guy. Well, since then, he OD'd and, all the drug stuff has stopped. Cause I mean, it was a show over there, but, he's dead now and I still have to deal with this. And I've got a picture of my property and
Put it on the overhead, the projector there, and then it'll come up. It's right there to your right.
I don't know how to do, okay. And also I've got a north, south, east, and west signatures of the people that own the property. They all own. And I gave them this piece of paper, and the cardboard does not offend anyone. So I don't know. Here's a picture. And that white fence right there, I put that there when I put that carport there 20-something years ago. It stayed there. As to the asphalt, nobody wants to admit to the fact, but storm water, because I complained, I've lived there a long time, and I've complained to stormwater about this, that all that dirt was eroding down. There's a drain that's out of this picture right here. And when the mailman or anybody goes by, it's a dustbin, and the sewer is like that lower than the street. It is just pulling the dirt out. And I told that to stormwater. They came and they fixed it. I was elated. And now it seems to be a problem, and consequently, the stormwater people that were up here a little while ago, wasting time and effort, they used to come on a weekly basis with the big vacuum cleaner to suck the drains out because they were so full of dirt. They haven't been there one time since that happened. I mean, it's actually saved the city money. Stormwater did it. Nobody wants to accept it. Everybody says, oh, well, that guy doesn't work here any longer. Well, so where does that leave me? And I live by myself with my dog. And that's the carport is there for my truck and my car. And I'm a very good steward of my neighborhood. Like I said, to be there successfully for 7 years, you got to be doing something right. So, and like I said, I've got signatures of all the 4 owners, north, south, east, and west of my property. And then I've got from Miss Castor, this right here, she mailed this to me. I'm trying to turn it around. Here we go. Yeah, and being on disability, because I'm on medication, and my guts are just bad news, like I said, I'm surviving. Underlined, it says one of these has to pertain as a part to my disability being granted. And I believe, enjoying my household, I could not enjoy it. Because my house faces to the east in blatant dead sunshine. And I just had cataract surgery as well. And it is so necessary for that carport. And like I said, there's other carports, multiple in the neighborhood, that are closer to the road than mine. I don't understand why I'm being picked on 21 or 2 years after the fact. I don't know what else to say. I think I've said everything. Unless you would like to see the signatures of the people.
Sure, if you could give them up to the attorney here, and we'll look at them. Thank you very much, sir. Anything else you'd like to add?
It's imperative that I keep it. It's my life. It's where I sit with my dog every day, all day, most days. That's where I sit. And also the leaves inundating, both of my feet have been broken. And, I'm not agile as I used to be. And when the leaves come down, it ain't nothing but a tripping hazard, slipping hazard. And the rain just, erodes everything. It's losing property every time it rains. Anytime there's a windstorm, the wind just blows down the street and it doesn't blow up in my face, and it's wonderful.
Thank you very much, sir. Are there any questions? If not, I'll ask for public comment. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this item? If there is nobody in public comment, are there any questions or comments from council? Is there, well, there's no rebuttal. I mean, there is rebuttal if you want to add anything else, but nobody mentioned anything. So if not.
And
can I get-
my dog is black, so she can't sit in the sunshine.
well-
The poor girl it's too hot for her.
Well, of
And
course
me
it
as
is.
well.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there a motion to close?
Motion closed.
Motion to close from Councilmember Henderson. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. And what's the pleasure of council? Do we uphold or overturn? Councilmember Clendenin, go ahead.
I move to affirm the VRB's decision to deny the variances requested in the application number VRB 2466 for the property located at 8406 North Edison Avenue due to the failure of the petitioner to meet the burden of proof to provide competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of the unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in sections 2780 of the city code, specifically that the hardships identified would not necessarily be resolved just by the continued use of that carport by the evidence that you've suggested. Just and having those conditions that sitting, you can sit in other areas of the house and to avoid the sun,
That's
not necessarily
just
in the
not where I
carport.
sit.
But I understand it. But there's the signatures that you brought, really, if they had come and testified, it would have been more of the weight of that evidence would have been heavier, but that's not really the competent, substantial evidence that we'd be looking for to reach these hardship criteria to overturn the decision of that board. So there really wasn't enough evidence suggested to us during this board. You want to help out there?
We have a motion, we have a second.
Yeah,
Councilmember
I would
Arquette.
just say that you should probably stick to section 2780,
Right.
which talks about the reasoning. And the hardship or practical difficulty does not result from the actions. It's a self-created hardship by putting it there. And unfortunately, we have to consider the property and not health issues. Unfortunately, we have a lot of stuff that comes in front of the variance board that has to do with health, but this is not about health, it's about your property and what you can and can't do on the property. And the variance is not in harmony with nor serves the general intent and purpose of this chapter and the adopted Tampa Comprehensive Plan.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second.
And the alleged hardship is not unique and singular with respect to the property.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote.
Clendenin,
Yes.
Henderson,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes.
and Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you very much, sir. That's it, the hearing is over. Sorry.
And it's not approved, and my mental health isn't part of the health
Thank you
criteria?
very much, sir. The hearing is over. Thank you, sir.
Is it in my favor or no?
No, it's not in your favor, sir. Thank you very much.
How about the remedy? What is the remedy?
If someone on the legal side, okay, go ahead, sir.
I mean, what, not to give you, well, I guess, whatever, to stop me if need be, I would, with whom did you speak for setting this up? Who did you speak with to set this hearing up, sir?
It was a woman down Carencia.
Okay. What I,
Carencia and Eric Cotton and
okay.
Lisa Middleton. I've been and Mr. Steyer. I've been in communicado with them, and, they seem to be on my side, but it seems like somebody isn't. And
Sure. And if I may, I would, and correct me, Mr. Shelby, if I'm wrong, I would follow up with them on what the next prospective steps should be. That's what I would do, because the hearing unfortunately is over, but I would follow up with them, sir, for that.
Thank you very much.
We're sorry, and I mean that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, it's me.
All right. The next item, or the last item, is my item regarding decorum and efficiency. I took a few notes here. Notes? Yeah, notes, so I don't lose my train of thought. All right, can I get a motion to receive and file 105 and 106? We have a motion, do we have a second? Do we have a second? We already did? Okay, never mind, take that back.
Take back. So.
Great. Councilmember Vieira, do you have new business, sir?
Yeah, just really quick, sorry. Oh, here we go. Let's see here. I had originally invited Karen Clay to come on May 15th to speak on her new 501c3, but it dawned on me that every year we have Gold Star parents over for Memorial Day, so I wanted to move, and I've already inquired with Ms. Clay on this, Ms. Clay's presentation for June 26th, where we have a clear calendar, if I may.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin, all in favor? Aye, any opposed?
Thank
Yes?
you. And then I would ask that we invite Gold Star families to come on May 15th of this year to speak on the Memorial Day holiday, which I think is 12 days after that.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin, all in favor? Aye, any opposed? Yes?
Then I would motion for a written staff report. Morris Bridge Road, I know a lot of y'all have been down Morris Bridge Road, which is in the county, or at least it's a county road. But there's a lot of privity there between Morris Bridge Road in terms of the county, the city, Hillsborough County, Pasco County, et cetera. And, Morris Bridge Road is often treated as a rural road, and it's anything but. You have neighborhoods out there like Easton Park, you have Corey Lake Isles, you have a lot of different houses of worship, a Sikh house of worship, an Islamic temple, a couple of Christian churches, and so forth. So I wanted for mobility to work with the appropriate government entities on what improvements the governments can make on Morris Bridge Road working together, and to report on us on that in the first week of June of this year. And just a written report, and then based upon that, we can see if any action can be taken.
What do you mean by improvement?
So improvements with regards to speed limit, with regards to.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
You were not
Sorry.
specific, so I didn't know what you meant.
Yes, ma'am, thank
We
you.
have a motion, do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin, all in favor? Aye.
And that's it, thank you, Council.
I don't have any new business. I just wanted to offer condolences to the family of Frances Enriquez. Many of you know her, many of you may not. She was the first woman city clerk for the city of Tampa, and she worked and spent 39 years here in the city. She passed away March 19th of this year, truly a trailblazer. And I just want to offer my condolences to the family and recognize her for everything that she did here in our city. She began her employment in 1954. So imagine different times. And in 1963, she was appointed deputy city clerk by Mayor Julian Lane.
First female.
First, that's right. So my condolences to the family. Councilmember Clendenin.
I have a few. Let's see, let's knock the easy one out first. I'd like to make a motion to present accommodation for the 2025 Tampa Pride Celebration on Saturday, March 29th, 2025, this weekend. The accommodation will be presented off-site at 11 a.m. at the Cuban Club.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
What did I miss? I'm sorry.
No, we're just at new business. I'm gonna come to you. Yes, sir.
We voted that I was the prettiest one on council.
Oh, see, that's why you are.
It was unanimous.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, so I have been in knee-deep in conversations about garages, my new favorite topic of conversation outside the streetcar. Speaking with staff, we need to clarify. So I've spoken with staff. I need to revise and clarify my motion from February 20th, 2025 to include changes in the Land Development Code text amendment cycle relating to residential off-street parking and tandem parking. I I wish to revise the motion to clarify that we ask staff to amend the code in the July 2024 cycle relating to single-family residential and townhome garage and carport standards to include an increase in the setback for garages to 18 feet where the parking is proposed to be in the structure. So the explanation of that bullet point is that if they're using the garage for, and the carport to be minimum parking minimums, you have to have the 18-foot to park the car in the carport, and that's why we have to do that for the setback. So it's to meet that minimum parking minimum if they're using the driveway for that purpose. Number 2 is to include new language specifying the width and depth of 1 and 2 car garages. I had mentioned 20 feet wide and 24 deep. That information had been given to me in our briefings with Stephen Benson prior to him leaving the city. In subsequent conversations, I think we're still going to work through this, the depth part of this. If there is a requirement in the city of Tampa that garbage has to be out hidden or shielded, one of those methods is they build these garages and shield by using the garage to shield it. When that's the case, 24 foot is a logical depth for those garages. If they're shielding it in another fashion, 22 feet would be a reasonable depth. So I'm still working with staff to resolve that in this final language that's going to be included. We're going to specify that the tandem parking inside a garage is prohibited, and we're going to clarify that there's no waiver for single-family parking standards. So for that, that's for the single family. So there's 2.
And what, do you have a date?
And this was just to clarify the motion that we made from February 20th, 2025.
Okay.
This is just to give staff some confirmation that we're moving in the right direction.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else?
Gosh, I thought I had something else, but I guess I don't.
Councilmember Henderson, did you have new business?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I was just a little bit triggered today, when Chief Tripp was standing before us. So I have a motion. I need to get a little bit more involved with fire. That's what my spirit is telling me. So what I want is updates on a regular basis, monthly, about Station 24. And I want her to come before us and do that in person. And also on a monthly basis in writing, I want a written monthly data report on bunker gear.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have a
Yeah,
second?
you need clarification?
No, I have a question.
Sure.
Do I have a second?
If I may.
Is there a second?
Well,
For discussion.
Thank you very
okay.
much. All right, Councilman Vieira.
We already get monthly written reports on.
bunker gear?
No, if I may.
Sure.
Station 24, and we get in-person quarterly reports on Station 24. So I don't know if that's.
Well, it seems that we do, but the public needs to hear it for themselves. They don't go digging, looking for information the way that we do on Station 24. So just her coming before us allows us to ask questions regarding what's in the report, even though they come out in writing and on a quarterly basis. That's the reason why I'm asking. And also today, just what was presented today based on the other information, written by others that, seems to be supported and understanding because they are experts or whatever they may be. I just feel like it's an opportunity to give us the data so that we won't be distracted when it comes to the bunker gear in particular. So I can separate them out if you don't, if you don't want to hear from Chief Tripp, on a monthly basis in person about Station 24, because Station 24 has been going on for so long,
And oh, wait.
So yeah, this is the part that I like. We get to talk about.
Councilmember Hurtak, yes.
Thank you. I have a suggestion. Why don't would Councilman Vieira be up to moving the written reports to in-person reports?
Sure. I mean, look.
Okay.
Well, but
So-
wait a second.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
When it comes to 24,
Yeah.
making them in person, I think that's going to be a waste of staff's time. I think that doing it in writing and then quarterly in person, we get the same benefit from that. I would have no objection to that, but again,
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, because it just seems like Station 24 has been a part of my life for the whole time I've been on council.
It has.
And even before then.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, I think for me, I'm sorry, was I recognized? Because I know
Yes,
we're talking
ma'am.
about decorum next. I just, I'm learning in the process of just the timetable of things. It's just, how do we, and expedite is a very soft word, but it's our responsibility to move things along. And I think when we're hearing it face to face, it just, we get to talk about it together up here. And that is the part that you can't get from the written report. You know what I'm saying? I get to hear your thoughts.
Sure.
And this is our open time to talk about it. And that's what's important to me, is that, you know, you can't break sunshine. So I get to hear everybody's thoughts up here, and then we can decide together through a motion, you know, how to push Station 24 along, because it's been a topic ever since I've been a member of this wonderful, amazing council that Charlie still wants to be a part of, I hope. And so that is, you know, that's my logic behind it, and that's the reason why I made the motion. I was just triggered today. I didn't come and, you know, plan with that, and I know that that was one of the things. But the bunker data monthly report, for sure.
Sure.
You know, so I can separate that out.
Sure.
So quarterly in person,
Yeah,
monthly written.
Yes, that, okay.
Same thing.
Yeah, okay. So I can keep it together, and the data monthly report about, okay, Celine, yes.
I need clarification.
Sure.
Because right now,
Separate
we
them.
do have a motion from Vieira where he has a monthly written report and quarterly in-person report for Station 24.
Okay.
Are you asking for that Station 24 report to be in-person monthly?
No, quarterly.
Quarterly.
That-
Okay,
it
so
already
we
exists.
keep
Yeah, so it
with
stays the same.
Stays the same. That's,
Yeah, so it'll stay
that's
the
fine.
same.
We just need, as
So
long
you
as
just need
we're
to make
talking.
a motion just for the bunker gear.
Correct, correct.
Can you restate your motion?
Sure. I move that we have a written monthly report on specific data regarding bunker gear for all stations.
Second with a question.
Sure.
We have a second, yes, ma'am?
When would you like that to begin?
Effective April. Like April, you know, I want a
April
report in April.
27th?
There's April 17th, there's.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, so
so-
let's give it at the end of April. Celine, yes? You know I don't make a lot of motions, so what now?
April.
I want it written.
Vieira just made a motion today for an update on the bunker gear on May 1st.
We'll start with May 1st and then on a monthly basis.
Are you in effect,
Can we have
are you in
some-
effect, I'm just
Oh, the
saying,
attorney wants to talk now.
yes, Martin Shelby, City Council
wants
Attorney,
to
are you in effect amending Councilmember Vieira's motion to expand it to be monthly thereafter?
Yes.
Written
they're-
monthly, thank you.
Written monthly.
Okay.
So
Starting
that we
May
won't
1st.
let it go,
Yeah.
you know. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, if I may, Mr.
Sure.
Chair. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my big thing on that was to keep a watchful eye on that,
Correct.
given the level of scrutiny required on that. But if you want to make it monthly, let's do it.
Yeah, because I don't want it to get lost in translation, and then we're reading all of these, you know, negative emails.
Councilmember
Thank you.
Clendenin.
So we need,
I hit on this earlier today, and there's still something that's gnawing on me about a lot of this stuff. And I'm not diminishing the need, because and I'll vote in favor of this. That being said, it's kind of counter to my gut, and I think maybe we're gonna talk about this next too. I'm really empathetic with city staff and how much work we're generating as far as reports and like Trip. If she's doing all this for us, is she distributing bunker gear? I mean, how much time are they spending doing all these things we're asking them to do? I don't know, but there's something telling me that we're asking an awful lot of our city staff to generate a lot of reports, a lot of in-persons, I know they're all glued to the TVs every Thursday. I mean, I know I've been here on weekends, and we have city staff here on weekends working on reports that we've asked them to generate, because they can't have enough time in the week to do it. And maybe the solution, I think we probably keep doing what we're doing right now, but I think somehow that we either have to ask the chair or create a work group of people to figure out how do we, I know the clerk's office has to track all this stuff. I mean, I just.
It's all in item 101 regarding efficiency.
Yeah, without using AI, I don't know how you do it. But it's, we somehow have got to figure out a way of consolidating this stuff and looking at it. Because I think if we looked at all this in front of us on one big sheet, we'd all be just aghast. I mean, of how much there's actually out there.
okay.
Can we talk about this at 101?
Next to one.
Yeah, let's talk about this at 101.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Kopesky, yes ma'am, did you
So
have something
there's
to
some-
add?
Just quickly, Hager Kopesky, City Council Budget Analyst. I just wanted to mention that the unique nature of Fire Station 24 is that is one of the, excuse me, projects where they recently selected a third party to actually manage the project for them. And generally that process of management project will come, part of the cost of that is to help report out the project.
Beautiful. I love hearing that.
Thank you. So you have your motion, and you
Yeah.
have a second.
Yeah, and just to respond to Clendenin, is that this really is to reduce the gaslighting and having
No, I get it.
good
I
information,
get it.
I think will serve the chief well, and reduce a lot of the distractors that are out there regarding, what's being said. So that's my logic behind it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Hurtak, Carlson, and then Miranda for new business. Yes, ma'am.
I'm requesting council approval to present an off-site commendation to Homegrown Hillsborough for promoting Food Waste Prevention Week, April 7th through April 13th. I will present the commendation on April 12th at a community event at Meacham Urban Farm.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Clendenin was the second. Yes, ma'am.
I move to continue the following staff report to April 17th, 2025, and to change it from an in-person to a written report. The motion was staff to work with Hager Kopesky, City Council Budget Analyst, to create and provide an updated list of the new format that will show purchases of less than $200,000 and the ways to share with the public monthly. This is on request of Ms. Kopesky.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and this would be citywide.
Yes, there was an original motion. It was April 7th,
She
or
said-
it was, yeah, no,
Here you go,
it's coming back April 17th, and it's no longer going to be in person, but simply written.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, ma'am.
And then, on March 6, 2025, CFO Dennis Rogero provided an update on the status of the unaudited FY 2024 general fund financials. At that time, Mr. O'Hara shared that after maintaining an unallocated fund balance at the 23% level, the remaining unallocated balance was $25.8 million. He also shared a short list of priorities and risks for council to consider. But no decisions were made. So in an effort to finalize how this balance will be allocated, I motion for council to review that list of priorities and risks and be prepared to make recommendations on how the $25.8 million should be distributed at either the April 24th workshop session or the May 1st regular meeting. I didn't know if we wanted to have big conversation about it. If so, I'm going to ask, if you would rather have this as a workshop item, I'm going to ask Councilmember Carlson if he might move one item for me. But if not, we can also do it at the May 1st regular meeting. What is y'all's pleasure?
I think a workshop.
Okay. Would it be okay if we moved the Indian Rocks Beach rental?
Can you just think, you want to include that in your?
How about this? I'll make the motion and then he can make a separate motion to move that.
That's fine. That works. Yeah, I'm
Because I
happy-
think
I'm
we're
happy
still
with the
working on the
workshop.
Indian Rocks Beach thing. Okay, so my motion will be discussed at the April 24th workshop.
Okay.
Aligning on the proposed distribution of the remaining balance will allow Revenue and Finance to better understand what we still need to be funded through the FY 26 budget process, which is why it's so important that we do it before or as soon as possible.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second, Councilmember Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
And then Councilmember Carlson will follow up with the motion regarding his workshop item. Anything else, ma'am?
That is it. That is all. Thank you
Councilmember
so
Carlson,
much.
then we'll close out with Miranda.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'll just make a motion to move that. What date was that on?
It was April 17th or April 27th, sorry.
To
24th,
move
got
to
it.
the Indian Rocks Beach item from April 20, whatever it was.
4th.
To the September workshop.
All right, we have,
September 25th.
Question for Councilmember Carlson. Does that have to be a workshop item?
Was it on the workshop before? or-
Yeah,
It was
but
on
we
the-
don't,
but
it
the
doesn't have
question-
to be.
But it's rather, I can't imagine a lengthy discussion on that initially, unless you think that is worthy of a workshop.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to put it on like the June 5th regular session?
You
That
still,
way
I
it's not.
believe you still have, might even time on the May 1st?
So to move it to the June 5th regular session.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Vieira, all in favor?
Aye. And I just thank you.
Okay, Councilmember, yes?
I just need a clarification question, if you don't mind. When you said to Carlson, I know that you're still working on the Indian Rocks Beach thing, like, how would you know that in terms of how we communicate, you know what I'm saying? So if I want you all to know something in advance of,
That's a good
without
question.
breaking sunshine.
No,
I'm
that's a
just
great
curious.
question. I
Thank
don't
you.
know that he's working on it, but I
Okay.
have read
Okay.
stories
I see.
that Indian Rocks Beach is working on legal issues and people who are doing Airbnbs. So I just assumed,
I
and that's
see.
wrong, maybe it's wrong of me,
Okay.
but to say that I know that there are some legal stuff going on about that right now, and currently the legislature is legislating.
Okay.
So who knows what's
Okay.
going to
It was
happen
just-
next?
I was just curious.
But no, that's a very valid question, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, and there,
I made assumptions.
there are news stories yesterday and the day before and other.
Yeah,
jurisdictions.
I get that part, but that's not how it was presented.
Yeah, no, I understand. Councilmember Miranda.
Thank you. I have 6 for the, regarding the budget, Mr. Chairman. They'll be real quick. I would like to make a motion for the administration to appear and present the fiscal year budget 2025 mid-year review during the May 15, 2025 regular city council.
We have a motion and a second from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Go ahead, sir.
Second, I would like to make a motion for Mayor Jane Castor to present the fiscal year 2026 budget at the July 17, 2025 regular city council and be placed first on the agenda.
We have a motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilman Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Yes, sir.
Thirdly, I would like to make a motion for the administration to appear for a special call workshop in the fiscal year 2026 capital budget on Monday, August the 4th, 2025 at 9 a.m.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Go ahead, sir.
Number 4, I would like to make a motion for the administration to appear in a special call workshop for the fiscal year 2026 operating budget on Monday, August the 18th, 2025 at 9 a.m.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Second from Councilman Clendon. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I would like to make a motion to set a first public hearing for the fiscal year 2026 budget for Wednesday, September the 3rd at 5:01 p.m.
We have a motion.
Wednesday?
Pardon me?
Wednesday?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when we have it every
I thought
year.
we did
I
it
would like to make a
Tuesdays.
motion for the first public hearing for the fiscal year 2026 budget
Tuesdays.
for Wednesday, September the 3rd at 5:01 p.m.
Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Obviously, the chair of the Finance Committee has worked with the Budget Department to get the dates.
That's what they want.
Where in the scheme of things, on the hierarchy of who gets to set which dates, the city of Tampa is not number one. They have to yield to where the school board, where the BOCC sets at the county,
Yeah.
and where the school board sets. And if that's the available date, and that's acceptable,
That's what they have.
and that's the.
That's what they're giving me anyway.
Yeah,
My
no,
suggestion is that obviously that's been cleared, and that's the appropriate
Right.
date.
September 3rd at 5:01
5:01,
p.m.
yes, sir.
Here.
And again, that's a Wednesday?
Yes. And we have a regular session the next
Right,
morning.
Wednesday.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And
Number 6 is I would like to make a motion for the second public hearing for fiscal year 2026 budget for Tuesday, September the 16th, 2025 at 5:01.
we have a motion and a second from Councilman Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
And Councilmember Hurtak, you had your mic on, and then Vieira.
Yeah, I was wondering if we should, since the mayor's budget presentation tends to be long, which isn't a bad thing, that we might want to limit the amount of staff reports that day.
Sure.
Right now, we only have one, so maybe 4 or 5. Does anybody have a suggestion?
4 is a good number.
Yeah, let's leave it at
Oh,
4. There's
okay.
2 now. It's and out of
Those are staff.
yeah, and out of respect for my birthday week as well.
Sure. Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Look at you thinking ahead.
Then I move that we limit the number of staff reports on July 17th, in-person staff reports, to 4.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Councilman Vieira.
Yes, sir. So, Councilman Miranda, one of the dates you mentioned, August 3rd, we have Councilwoman Henderson and I have a HART board meeting at that time. If I may, because I would like to be here, perhaps, and I'm fine with keeping it on there now, but perhaps we can look
What
for an
day is that?
alternative date.
What
That would
day?
be August 3rd, the first Monday.
August?
The 4th?
I'm sorry, August 4th, yes, sir. And so again, we don't have to go through calendars now or anything. I would just request, because I chair the heart meetings, and I do like to be at them, obviously.
Yeah.
So we can look at that just
Let's
later.
think
just
about
to-
that from now till next week.
Yes,
and-
sir.
All right.
And
Yes.
I haven't. You know, I've been thinking, and I don't know, and I had a discussion with Hager on this, the budget analyst. I don't know how she can operate without, I don't know how she gets the information, where to go, what not to go. I mean, I feel sorry for her. I really do.
I'm sorry.
I couldn't do the job that way, so I have to see in business-wise how you handle it when you have 7 individuals that are either your boss or not your boss, but you have to communicate with all 7 of them. So I like to set up a system where if we're going to do something, any one of us 7, we go to the chair and he sends a memo regarding what it is, so we can vote on it. You want to have that
Oh,
on that day?
I have this in the next item that I wanted to
Oh,
discuss.
then
It's
you
on
handle
there.
it then.
Yeah, no, but I'm bringing this up. Any other new business? If not, I'm going to go into item 101, and that'll be the last item of the day.
All right.
Yes, this is about council decorum and efficiency. I'm thinking how I want to start off this discussion. So there's many different ways, but I think we're a very good city council. I think we're probably the hardest working city council body that I have worked with, and historically, well, there's a lot of great city council members, but the city of Tampa has changed. We have grown significantly. There's a lot going on. We're not through the Great Recession anymore, at least not yet for part 2. There were council meetings that were very, very short. Each council meeting is quite an adventure. We're very busy. I see how every council member works, goes out into the field, the boards that they're on, everything that they do. Councilmember Hurtak works nonstop. Councilmember Vieira's everywhere. Councilmember Henderson does so many things, and I could go on and on. We're very busy. Staff is very busy. There's a lot going on in the city of Tampa. There's a lot of growth. You see how these agendas are. We have a lot of public engagement and public involvement. Maybe it's social media, maybe it's just a sign of the times. And I wanted to talk about council decorum, council efficiency. I've spoken with the mayor. I made this motion. At the beginning of this month, I've spoken with the mayor, I've spoken with the chief of staff. I've spoken to my wife, to get different. And I did speak with my mom. But, so as chairman, I took a couple of notes because I don't want to lose my train of thought. I want to have a civil and productive agenda. And, because again, we're all very busy. We have a lot on our plates. And I made this motion to speak about this. And like I said, I've spoken with the mayor and other people. So I want to make sure that we're respectful of each other, of staff and the public. And I know that we're under a lot of stress, so are they. I know that conversations can get heated. We agree with things, we disagree with things, but at the end of the day, we just need to be respectful. This week marks 10 years, April 1st, that I was sworn in. And the first piece of advice that I got, I think it was March 27th or March 28th in 2015. The only piece of advice I got that day as I went into orientation to meet everybody before I was sworn in was, don't yell at staff. Staff works very hard. If you notice, and this is just me, I don't make a lot of motions. I don't ask for staff reports very often. I can't remember the last time I did. Maybe I'm wrong. I like to pick up the phone and I like to have conversations. If I had an issue with Mayor Buckhorn, we disagreed on a lot of stuff, starting with the summer of 2015 with the Civilian Review Board. I would just pick up the phone and talk to him. I would make comments publicly, but if I had an issue with him, I would pick up the phone and he would usually meet with me. I try to do that with this mayor. I try to do that with department heads because I want to be civil and respectful because they have lives too. They are human beings. I think moving forward, I know I've been hitting the gavel harder than usual. People have commented on that. But if conversations get out of line and I'm calling order and it just keeps going, I'm just going to call for a recess, and it's going to waste everybody's time. If there is a specific concern that we can avoid, staff is busy. We talked about that regarding, staff reports, and they have a lot on their plate, and monthly reports, and, I like to pick up the phone. I had a question with Chief Bennett the other day. He picked up the phone. I had an answer. I didn't need a staff report. Chief of Police Burke called the other day, and this is Friday afternoon at the end of the day. I got it answered. Rogero had it answered. I can go on and on and on because I don't want to waste our time or their time because we have a lot going on, or the mayor or the chief of staff, anybody. I want to make sure that all voices are heard. We have the opportunity to speak. we have public comment, the public has opportunities to speak. Staff has the opportunity to respond as well. I just want to make sure that it's respectful. I ask that people don't interrupt. I know we get passionate up here in the discussions, and this is the only time that we can talk. We should wait until we're recognized. I want to keep things civil, even if we disagree. We don't have to fight or appear as if we're fighting. And again, you know, as far as efficiency, that's the easy part, I think. As far as efficiency, I think we should set a special discussion meeting May 8th after CRA, since we're already here. We can meet in the Sister Cities room. It'll be publicly noticed and recorded. We will have our attorney present. We've done this in the past. I did this under the Reddick, Capeen, Suarez, Cohen Council, and it was a good meeting. We aired out our grievances, you could say, but it was a civil conversation. And it was also different times, especially politically. In the meantime, I think we need to be patient of staff. If we can, I mean, they're so bogged down with work. I've heard that they spend 2 days a week responding to city council. I've heard that there's a chart of all of our motions. And I know we get a lot of pressure. We're the front line. If we don't get stopped at the grocery store, at the gas station, at public comment, down in the hallway, I think we get the brunt of it because we have public comment. The mayor really doesn't have public comment every Thursday when we have regular meeting, or when we have public comment. It's tough, and it has to wear psychologically on us because there's a lot going on. We had the hurricanes, terrible, terrible time for a lot of people, a lot of pressure, and I commend city council members for being professional and being responsive to our constituency. You know, I take a staff briefing, I get an agenda review, which as chair you'll get an agenda review. I get a staff briefing usually the day before, and the department heads are online. I ask all my questions. I go through the agenda, I make my notes, and that's it, because I don't want to waste our time, I don't want to waste their time, and I want to be as efficient as possible. I don't know if all council members get briefings or not. If you do, great. If not, I highly encourage it because it saves a lot of time and a lot of things get aired out, and we're not lost in miscommunication or translation. Regarding Ms. Kopesky, Councilmember Miranda said it. You know, I don't know how she does it because you do a fantastic job. But when we ask, a council member asks something of Ms. Kopesky, if we can make it into a motion, so we know publicly. If she's asked to, you know, go to the administration or staff to get information, just so when she comes up to present, we have the information, you know, ahead of time and we're ready. And whatever answers you have, Ms. Kopesky, if you can just submit it in a memo, but in the name of being out in the sunshine, just so we don't feel surprised. I don't want to use the word ambush, but just so we know. And then any other points we can hold for discussion.
Excuse me, just because it's in my brain.
Yes, ma'am.
So she gets asked to do things that I may not know about. That's what you're saying?
I don't know. I'm not making any assumptions, but if I wanted some information from Ms. Kopesky, for example, I would make that motion at a council meeting or under new business out of respect for the council members, so, you know, everybody has that.
Or can it be a memo to all of us, or does it have to?
Yeah, if I say, you know, I want her to tell me about, you know, X department, if she could send the response, you know, in a memo, I'll make the motion formally so you know what I'm thinking of and want to do, and she can respond by memo and send it out to council members so we can all see it, and then it is public record. So
yeah, okay.
That's really it. You know, it's again, I think we're a very good city council. We work very, very hard. Putting politics aside, you know, I appreciate each and every person here, and I think the public does too. You know, there's, I'm glad that we have this kind of engagement, and the public too, because, I mean, we have a member of the public here who is very, very active, and I appreciate that because it wasn't always like that. We would get out, I remember early budget meetings with Councilman Miranda, we'd be done in 30 minutes, and it'd be $1 billion budget. But now we're digging into things, and I think we are really doing the work that is expected of us, and
if I may interrupt.
Yes.
Also, when you say that, you have to say that when we advertise it all over the city, maybe one person from the community would come, sometimes none.
Yeah, we would have one person for public comments. I mean, this is like the 2016 budget, but now we're here for a long time. I try not to do anything, book anything for August and September because it's budget and now hurricane season. So we're bogged down. And that's really all that I wanted to say. I think it's very simple. I have tremendous respect for this board. I have tremendous respect for the department heads that come here. This is not an easy job. Politics is not easy. I was in church for Ash Wednesday, and in the middle of the service, a gentleman approaches me and he goes, "Hey," as I'm praying, "Hey, I made the, I turned on city council today. I don't know how y'all do it." So it doesn't go unnoticed, but also it is a very stressful job. And that's it. I mean, if any other council member wants to say anything, yes, Councilman Clinton. If not, I would make the motion that we set up this special discussion, publicly noticed, at the end of the CRA meeting, immediately following the CRA meeting on May 8th, down in the Sister Cities room, which should be able to accommodate.
Yeah.
All right. So that's my motion.
Okay, I just have a couple comments first.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well,
Okay.
you have the.
So we have a motion from Chairman Maniscalco, a second from Councilman Vera, and discussion, and I have a couple of observations. One on the Hager issue. Hager, excuse me. I say that every time. I'm not necessarily in support of that because one, I very rarely. I mean, I don't have a lot of work with going into budget season. I will, and I think that there's times that I may be digging. I don't even know what I'm thinking through things. So it's not necessarily something fully flushed out. So I don't necessarily think that I want to write a memo to council or have public and come up in public and saying what I've asked for as far as like information, because I'm just, like I say, I'm just thinking through things. I get your intent, and maybe I don't, because I don't really get what the issue is there. But I think that we should have individual personal relationships and expectations and be able to work one-on-one, and then maybe in the greater picture, I